I truly did believe in God and Jesus. And I started smoking and drinking, I understood how much of a moral push that was from what I actually believed. Because I know what I'm doing is wrong, but now I can't stop. Because my mom wanted me nowhere near her house. And there we had a conversation that broke down in tears. And she asked me, like, why don't you just end your life? The short answer is I wouldn't introduce myself. I was a guy who was very in the back of the corner, try his best to not be noticed at all, not to introduce himself at all. That was me. So the difference is quite stark. I'm quite proud of who I am today, and it is only by the goodness of God that I can say that. So I am Mpho, no middle name, Kamohi. That is me. Said I was raised in a God-fearing household. My grandmother taught me how, along with my cousins, and she taught us how to read the Bible. We would switch off the TV. She would go into scripture. She would read a scripture, and I think it was a seed to ask questions about the Bible, to seek a relationship with Jesus and God. I loved animals from a very young age as well, but horses in particular. So up until the point where I was riding horses from the age of 9, and the barn became my second home. That kept me sane for a very long time, up until my choices overrid that love. My childhood was a mixture. My childhood was a mixture of both internal conflict and absolute love and external adoration. I was a very quiet, very sensitive kid. This was in school, but also in the household. And it didn't help that I was the lazy guy. I was the lazy kid. So I didn't put in the effort as well to kind of help myself along. What made it the worst was the external pressure from family, from my mother in particular. We've had quite a turbulent relationship, standing in grace as to this day. Every time I as a child would bring up emotions or things that I was going through in a way that a child would, it was always shrugged aside, or even worse, I was beaten for it. So therefore it invalidated the feeling. And therefore I learned, okay, when I have these tricky emotions, I don't communicate them, because if I do communicate them, I get reprimanded. And that just created a whole cycle which carried on for my whole life, basically, up until this point. My behaviors obviously would manifest in whichever ways they did. For me, it was isolation as a child, extreme isolation in that matter. But my mom pushed for excellence, man. She really, really pushed for excellence. Today I can look back and say, okay, I can see she had the best intention at heart. Back then, as a kid, I didn't quite understand it. She was just rigid in terms of her boundaries and her pushing. So that's what it felt like. It just felt like I'm getting pressure from school. I'm getting pressure from moms to do well at school, and my introspective nature would just shut off. However, as a countermeasure, I would say, an outward display of behavior was the extroverted dude, which took a lot of energy. In short, I was portraying something that I was not. I was quite good at being whatever kind of group wanted me to be, at the sake or at the cost of myself, taking consideration of my own emotions and own feelings. I mean, we can't talk about school without mentioning substances, because that's where it started for me, right? That's where it started. I started smoking cigarettes and alcohol when I was about 14 years old. My friends were able to drink and smoke only on weekends, whereas I started drinking and smoking only on weekends, but then it quickly escalated to me drinking and smoking in the week, perhaps after school, forming different friend groups that was the norm for them. Smoking and drinking after school was a norm for them. So then I adapted that, and that was my new norm. And all of this was, I could tell you, it was a coping mechanism. Perhaps it was. There's a whole lot of reasons that we can stick onto that. However, it did help in my pursuit of being that which I wasn't. It helped me be more extroverted, in short. Using the drugs, using the alcohol, it gave me that persona that hey, this dude he's a chatterbox, and I was like, hey, I always wanted to be a chatterbox, and therefore I adopted that. And therefore, as we progress and we were reaching closer to the end of school, the cigarettes and the alcohol got swapped out for pills, for party drugs. Those quickly swapped out for even harder drugs as we were progressing out of school. And as soon as this was the beginning of my gap year, and it's true as Bob, that wicked demon of addiction reared its head. The need to be extroverted comes from that need of being seen, being heard, being understood. And ultimately, that's what I was running towards. That's what I innately always wanted. However, the means by which I got there were not healthy. Because nothing was dealt with. I was still that kid who wanted a voice, but at the stage that I was at life, it felt like I was just getting further and further away of being able to, how can I say, to own my emotions, So, and I also think through the years of drug use, I kind of suppressed that even further down, because all I knew was if I don't like the way I'm feeling, I can just take this and this drug and I don't feel that anymore. So that's exactly what I did. And that itself became a pattern. When I started smoking and drinking, I understood how much of a moral push that was from what I actually believed, because I truly did believe in God and Jesus, and how I knew that smoking and drinking was wrong. I received Jesus for myself prior to my matric year. I was in a tent in the middle of Rustenburg, and I remember going with my aunt for those 3 days, and I had a lot of questions for myself. So my heart was just primed and really in the correct position to receive something from God. And I believe I really did receive something from God that evening. That's where my love for God was born. Rather, that's where God kind of cracked something open in me. So mind you, if we take that experience and you topple drug abuse on top of it, now there's an internal conflict, because I know what I'm doing is wrong, but now I can't stop. It's entrenched now. Mind you, this is an incremental dismantling of my relationships and my friendships, because using all these drugs, I couldn't do so outwardly, because I knew, again, that internal conflict. I knew that if the people that I love see me doing this, they would know that, I'm throwing my life away. So that internal conflict pushed me to use in my own space and in the secrecy, right? Using and living I was trying my best to make them go hand in hand. I wanted to use, but also wanted to live, So 2018, I, again, put the love, the passion that I had, I digged it out from somewhere in there, because I had a very deep-seated love for horses. And I did some research and I found a school up in Howick, in KZN. So I studied that and I was like, that's something that I would love to do. And if I was going to a school in the Midlands, in the most beautiful place in Carcliffe.
Mpho was actually a pretty good student. Great with the horses, great with the natural horsemanship stuff, good at ETT, academics.
Sound familiar?
So, yeah, maybe a bit more work, but he was great.
All of a sudden, it felt like my heart was just received everything that it ever wanted. And almost instantly, I stopped using drugs. I stopped using drugs for a period. Remind you, again, that little demon, just all it takes is just one little decision. There was a dude who I was studying with who would smoke weed quite medicinally. if you will, for him at least. And once I took that first drag, I was back on my roller coaster and again, spiral. So the end of 2018, I got expelled because I got caught smoking weed. I kind of got myself clean, got my mind right, and reached out to the principal and asked her if I could have a second chance, and she said absolutely. You know, she agreed. She saw some potential in me, and I think by God's touch, she allowed me to go into the next school year. But now, you know, as patterns go and as addiction goes, it doesn't stay a circle, right? Like I said, it's a spiral, and it's a spiral down. So in 2019, about the same time, same pattern rears its head, drinking, smoking. Not only this time it didn't stay at smoking, it went to me finding other drugs, you know. And I remember they were drilling one night and they all went home, and I decided to stay because I wanted drugs. And I searched all night, this club, that club, this club, that club, couldn't find anything. And I drove down the most dodgiest road ever to trying to score my drugs, my cat and my coke. And I ended up buying some dodgy stuff from some dodgy tin house in the corner somewhere, and took it back to school, back to the school premises, and I used it in my room. This room is I don't remember a lot fondly of this place. It was a very dark place. I was in a dark place, therefore it made this room quite a box. But fortunately enough, outside there it wasn't so much so.
What was the last memory you had here?
No memory at all. Complete blackout. All I can remember was not even waking up the next morning, being woken up the next morning.
So I'm not really a really panicky person, but Sadie came in and said MK had missed morning check, which is always a drama at the yard. So I went off storming, angry, to go and find MK, only to find him not so well, conscious, but not with it. He'd been vomiting, he was drooling, and then when we got him up, he'd actually looked like he'd had a stroke. He was all paralyzed on the left. Anyway, we rushed him to the local hospital.
I could barely hear anything. Every noise was muffled, and my left hand was paralyzed, completely paralyzed. So they rushed me to the hospital, and I ended up in ICU because I'd had a seizure. So I was expelled indefinitely after that, if you can imagine. My family had written me off, fair enough, rightfully so. My friends had written me off because I was a toxic one. I was. After my expulsion at BSET, it was a slippery slope. It feels like it happened like this, but we're talking about events that took, maybe 4 years? It was 4 years of sliding down a hill. I can't even paint a picture for you of how that journey sliding down that hill looked like. Because one second I was here, in essence living the dream, to finding myself trying to survive for food, for drugs, it was crazy. It was absolutely surreal being on the streets. I will never forget the smell of being on the streets to this day. That smell is forever encroached in my cranium. That's something that gives imagery to my mind almost every time I think about using drugs. It's like, and naturally, I think it's funny because my drug of choice was put up my nose. So that was a smell you would think I would remember in terms of using drugs and cravings and things like that. But no, that's what I remember. I remember the smell of brokenness. I remember the smell of darkness. I remember the smell of just absolute hopelessness. It was scary, man. It was absolutely scary. There was one time in particular, because my mom wanted me nowhere near her house. Fair enough, rightfully so. And there was a time that I called her up because I was so hungry. I hadn't eaten in days, obviously, because all my money was going to drugs. I called her and I was like, please, can you just prepare me a lunchbox, a meal? I'm hungry. And she told me to come over. And there we had a conversation, and she asked me, like, why don't you just end your life? Why don't you just end it? And my response to her, I wasn't even shocked at the time. Like I say, hindsight's a clear view. Now that I look back at it, that's the extent that I pushed somebody to somebody who in essence is the closest person to me. But in the moment, my reply to her was, Mom, I'm trying. I was just trying to not be. I didn't want to be anything. I don't want to be on this earth. I don't want to be a person who feels. I was just done with it all. Using drugs was my best attempt at a solution. I was using day in and day out. But there was one evening in particular where after a whole day of using drugs, for one reason or another, I'd walked to a gas station bathroom, public bathroom, and for the first time in a very long time, I looked at myself in the mirror, and I was a skeleton, man. I saw skin and bone first and foremostly, but then I looked beyond, and I saw my heart, which was just hardened. It was hardened by circumstances, it was hardened by environment, it was hardened by choice. And I'm looking at myself in this mirror. I could see how the accumulation of my choices had brought me to where I was. That still small voice again beckoned and beckoned and beckoned and said, it reminded me of my complete reliance upon God. When I looked at myself, I just saw absolute chaos and no way out, but that's where a way out in the form of just something so small and so little as hope, saying, listen, you can get out of this. It's gonna take everything you've got, but you can get out of this. There is a life, and I want you to live it abundantly. And Jesus said to his disciples, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Because in recovery, I thought I was losing a life. In essence, I was letting go of a certain lifestyle. And Jesus said, if you lose that, you will find me. You will find life in me. Because apart from God, I am nothing. I stand solely upon grace. I mean, if you look at the orchestration of people he put in my life and in my path at the moments that he did, you can call it whatever you want. I will call it God's divine intervention. The moment after that encounter in the bathroom, I did go to my first recovery meeting. I remember that. It was 40 kilometers away, but if I start walking now, I'll make it. That's exactly what I did. And that in essence marks the beginning, the physical beginning of my journey into recovery. It was literally a hike to my meeting. It was a chair that I'd never imagined to sit in. The dude off the street. What? Me? No way, it's never. So that's who I was, and that's how I sat down. It was real. It was real for the first time in a long time, because I was just like, here I am. I'm here. I don't know nothing. All I do know is that I want a better life. I know that I've got a hope now. I just don't know how to do it. Can you help me? And that's what sitting in that meeting was can you help me? It was a breath of fresh air that I could finally take. It felt like a weight was kind of, this is where I can release a weight. So it felt like a safe space for sure. That's what my first meeting felt like. My facilitator reached out to an Mpho called Project Exodus, and he got me a call. That's all he got me. He got me an opportunity. He got me an opportunity to continue to be honest in my recovery journey. And they tell me all about the recovery house, and they tell me about Project Exodus's recovery program and how they go about it. And I said, that's it. I said to my facilitator, that's what I was waiting for. I relocated my whole life from Johannesburg to Durban. Project Exodus is just groundbreaking. The opportunity and resources Project Exodus has given me to battle with the demons that I have within myself, I can't even fathom it. It's not lonely because there is a community and there's communities, and Project Exodus taught me that in depth. So there's so much learning that's happened. Project Exodus runs a beautiful program which dives into so many cognitive behavioral therapies, and I mean it's not one-sided, it's holistic, So the biggest thing is that Project Exodus puts God at the front and center, puts God where he rightfully belongs, and in my heart that's what was ringing true, So God is where he belongs, and from it everything else flows out. He's given me a hunger to to think on the things that I do, think on the things that I say, and not only that, but to build the person that I want to be. I am now a qualified recovery coach, addiction recovery coach. I hope to be an instrument in God's hands. That's the only thing that I can actually hope for and envision. In short, I treat myself like I'm somebody that matters now. But I would be doing my creator disservice if I chose to be a side character in my story. So that's the biggest contrast, is I've realized that life is worth living and I want to live it because God is the author and the finisher of my faith, of my life, of my journey. What else has recovery given you? Relationships, friendships. All those, that relationship that I told you about of me and my mother, the same woman who asked me to, that relationship has changed in dynamic so much, and me and my mother can have adult conversations now. I was just at her place over the December holidays, and she was so proud of being able to just interact with the son who's there, who's with it. She said, "What a pleasure it is to have you in my house." And I was like, wow, this was off years of saying, "Don't be in my house." These are fruits. There's relationships that I can talk about. There's friendships that have mended.
We were in touch with Sadie for a bit, and we always ask about you.
Sure.
Where's MK? But yeah, so I'm really chuffed. I'm really chuffed that he's here.
What a different lens, eh? Because in my head, it was a completely different narrative. It was like, of course, there was these guys are mad at me narrative, and it's like, but I use that as like a cut ties type of thing.
I don't think we were mad at you. I mean, I don't think I ever felt angry towards you for what you did, like as in you were silly, you had so much opportunity. But no, I don't think, never angry. There's no anger, there's...
Perspective was like sheer disgust in my brain. In my brain, when I thought of you guys, it was like, what? What must they
No,
think?
I mean, it changed the dynamics of the day for sure. But no, I think it's more concern and like what's going to happen to you in the future, And then I think we speak about you a lot because there was just radio silence. We have had really no closure about you as a person. It's great to have you back. Yeah, your story. You're probably angry with yourself.
I was. I definitely was. But I think this moment, there's a lot of healing. Shucks. Recovery has given me all that and some. Yeah, I think the most important might just be the relationships. That's for sure. Something God has always instilled in me, in this all sensitive introvert, is an absolute love for writing and creative expression. And God has given me a beautiful love of a form of creative expression, which I would love to share with you, because that expression is poetry. The poetry that I would love to recite to you is, for me on a deeper level, it's my favorite way to communicate with God. It's my favorite way to worship God. So, without further ado, it goes something like this. It goes something like this. I title this one, Grace, Power, Glory. Grace, Power, Glory, remember, so I say it. Grace, power, and glory. Right now, I tell you, God has already painted your story. He has gone ahead and he has paved the road. In the days of old, he used to ordain his prophets to say what is foretold, to lead his chosen ones to his glory, which is better than choice gold. So you don't have to tell me twice because I'm already sold. I'm here and I'm bold in the light of his grace, knowing that if I stick to his road, the day will come when I meet and touch his face. Oh, he has put so much in place. So go ahead and run your race towards God. And yes, I know it might be hard, but trust in him, because I can tell you there is no life in sin. So let's shout glory, glory to the Most High, Don't sit there and let life pass you by. As I said, glory, power, grace. Hunger to see his face. Know that he is with you in every place. Oh, this God we serve is so great. So please don't hesitate. Because he's the one who created you. He knows you far better than you think he do. So please listen to the words that I'm saying because they are true. Right now, I just pray that I'm an instrument and he's speaking straight through me to you. So stop contemplating, sitting there debating with yourself. Because God is right here and he is your help. So join me in giving him a shout of praise. Because long are the days in eternal life. You'll no longer need to fear in the dead of night when somebody tries to turn out the light. Because God is light. And his light is so bright, he's in your corner and he's ready to fight on your behalf. So don't let another moment go past. Turn away from the devil's pleasure and start walking towards your Father. Because in that you'll end up going much farther. And it's not to say that God will give you joy in the form of a toy. He won't give it to you in the form of a toy or a material thing. No, what he will bring to you is so much greater than you can imagine. So just trust and believe in God and watch what will happen. I am Mpho, no middle name Kamuhi. That is my name. I am a gift. That is the meaning of my name. So I will introduce myself as a gift. I am a son. I am a brother. I am God's handiwork. I am clay in the hands of the sculptor. You know, that's who I am. That is who I am.